Hi, everyone, and welcome back to Engineering Quality, the podcast where we explore insights into testing and engineering. I'm Veronica.
Hi, everyone. I'm Ellie.
Hi, everyone, and I'm Royalee. And today we're super excited to welcome Shaquanna Brown as our guest to our podcast today. And we will be talking about Agile. I've had the pleasure of working with Shaquanna. We worked together at a previous company, and I can tell you firsthand she's incredibly knowledgeable when it comes to Agile, from guiding ceremonies to helping teams align, adapt, and truly embrace agility. She's worked with teams across industries leading agile transformations, supporting leaders as they shift their mindset, and always keeping quality at the center of how software gets delivered. Shaquanna, welcome to our podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. Happy to be here.
Hi, Shaquanna. Again, it's super nice to have you in our podcast today. And before we dive in, we really like to do an icebreaker. We usually ask all of our guests one simple question so we can get started. If you were not in tech right now, what would you be doing?
If I was not in tech, I would. It's a little bit of a cheat because it could certainly relate to tech in different ways. But if I was not in tech, I would have certainly have better aligned my career with organizational development. And it is akin to the work that I've done as an Agile coach or even as a BizOps lead, because it is about helping to support teams and organizations. But I think I would have gone deeper along that career path.
Oh, that sounds great. So it's more like even outside of tech, right? Helping the teams to
Correct.
organize, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Yep. It's all about, systems, relationships, ensuring that organizations have the best practices. I feel like a lot of the work that I do, whether it's with Agile or BizOps, certainly relates to that. So a lot of my current research and aspirations has been going deeper into organizational development and how that might help me be a better tech leader.
Oh, awesome.
Okay. That's awesome. All right, Shaquanna, first, we want to start from very basic, I would say, question. When you start working with a team as an agile coach, do you usually notice any correlation between agile maturity that team has and the quality of the software they are building?
Yeah. So if I'm working with a team, usually there is a very strong correlation between team with higher agile maturity, right? And higher software quality, if you will. They tend to have stronger feedback loops. Teams with higher agile maturity tend to have clearer working agreements and tighter integration of their quality practices overall. That said, I've also seen some newer teams to Agile with potentially lower Agile maturity still produce decent software quality. I think where you end up seeing the difference is in sustainability. So teams with higher Agile maturity tend to have um, much more sustainable practices that allow you to ensure that quality isn't just accidental or isn't just like fragile, if you will. It's longer lasting, whereas with teams with higher agile maturity, that quality is scalable, it's systemic, it's repeatable, it's baked into the way that that team works.
That's a great point. I love that the agile maturity helps, but it's not the only thing to deliver quality software as well. So
Right.
that's really great. Do you have a story where agile practices directly improve the quality of a product? Something where you could clearly see the before and after impact?
Yeah. One story that comes to mind for me was when I coached a team that had really late defect discovery, right? So some of the things that we did to help improve the quality and agile practices on that team was introducing more test-driven development practices, along with pairing that with daily collaboration between testers and software developers. So then within a couple of sprints, we're able to see defect leakage drop fairly significantly, and the team's confidence in their releases grew as well. Fast forward to my role currently, as like a BizOps lead, I also see the organizational impact when agile maturity and quality improves on teams, right? So teams that embed these same practices not only deliver high quality code, but they reduce rework, which shows up in budget efficiency and predictability for the organization as a whole.
I love that. I love that
Mhm.
example because a lot of times when you find yourself stressing the importance just within
Mhm.
your team,
Mhm.
it's also important to show the data to the higher ups, right? To show them how the company on a whole could save if we were using these agile practices and we were doing the things that we do. And I love the fact that you encourage them to introduce TDD.
Mhm.
Test driven development always helps to make a difference.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a connection that people often forget. Like we focus so much when we talk about agile on the team, but the team is in service of the organization. So I always like to pair
Exactly.
the benefits at the team level with the overall advantages the organization can achieve as well.
Absolutely. I love
Mhm.
that. So, as we touched on the teams, right, let's talk a little bit more specifically about quality engineering teams and testing. So, there used to be this misconception, right, that in Agile, testing and testers weren't really needed. We've seen that at a lot of companies. If they can do without someone on a team, they try to do without the tester. And I know that you're not actively in an Agile coaching role right now, but is there something that you came across in your previous role?
Definitely. I've seen organizations that have skewed towards we don't need testers. Our software developers, our engineers should be testers as well, to organizations who believe that they should be very distinct capabilities. And honestly, I don't really know if there's a right or wrong answer. I think it depends on the scale of the organization and the agile maturity of the organization. So my experience has been extremely positive with having quality engineering teams, if you will. They bring rigor and structure that sometimes developers overlook, if you will. At the same time, though, I do believe that the best outcomes happen when quality isn't treated as like a separate checkpoint, right? Like in my coaching days, when I talk about quality, it's bringing testers into like backlog refinement, bringing testers into sprint planning, making sure that they're not just downstream. We're taking a look at quality. Like it needs to be integrated from the beginning. And currently, in my current role, I do believe that quality engineering helps serve as like a force multiplier where they're building frameworks, they're building
Yeah.
automation, they're building practices that help agile teams raise the quality bar together. But it really needs to be integrated and baked into like a shared responsibility, if you will, for the whole team.
Yeah, I love that you mentioned that two things are very that we talked about a lot in this podcast before. Like one is fully integrating the quality engineer
Mhm.
within the squad. It's not like someone that just joins at the end when everything's developed. And the other thing is that quality should be a whole team thing as well. So it's amazing to hear that from someone that's outside of testing, because we keep saying repeating this all over and over to our testers and our teams that we work with, to see that can be seen and understood from outside of testing organizations as well. It's really
Right.
exciting.
It is.
Yes, and I wanna actually dive deeper into this topic. So, Shaquanna, you mentioned that, well, sometimes teams do not have testers, sometimes they do, but they are not fully integrated. So it seems like you have seen the teams where testers are siloed, right? And where the quality is considered someone else's job, not everyone else's responsibility. Can you share some ways on how we can get the team out of these weeds?
Yeah. And again, I really think it's about shifting left, right? Like bringing quality forward, if you will. So it's just like with any specialized design when we're developing software. Like if we treat things in silos, we're not going to produce the best work, if you will, for the end user. So it really is about ensuring that, quality engineers have as much stake at the table as, the designer, as the product owner, as the software developer, that they understand the stories that they're testing, that the code that's being built. Sometimes that might mean, sitting side by side a software developer, as they're coding and just ensuring that, we're really clear about what we're testing, if you will. For me, it's really about ensuring that, when we're talking about cross-functional, that it's not really just about, everyone should code and test equally necessarily, but it's really about ensuring that it is a shared responsibility for the team as a whole. So we're not negating the need for specialized skills by any means necessary. We just need to make sure that we bring quality engineers to the table from the very beginning.
Absolutely, because I've seen how software development lifecycle improved as a whole when there's that alignment. The testers know what they're planning to test, and the devs are aligned with, okay, this is what they'll be testing. This is also, because I've seen cases where every function is siloed. The design wants something specific. Engineers are building something slightly different, and testers are planning to test something completely out of the way.
Exactly.
And then it's at the very end when the testing is happening and there are tons of bugs being found. And also, not to mention, a lot of times devs don't even test themselves, right? They just build whatever they think they should build, pass it over, and then it's at the very end where there are tons of bugs right before the release date that we realize, okay, the team completely not aligned.
Right.
So it's very important.
Yeah, it's like testers, they bring a different mindset, just like the designers that you mentioned bring a different mindset. So we need to have their diverse perspective at the table out the gate. Like they're thinking about edge cases. They're also thinking about usability. They're thinking about risk, if you will. So those are all strengths that engineering, quality engineers bring to the table. And we don't want to, wait to blend their perspective in at the end.
Yes, exactly. And I think also what you said about blending it in, it's really difficult for that to work because we could have given feedback way earlier, things like we could have avoided even bugs if we had a conversation about the system or the environment or, the error messages. And I find that also, there is it's all about a mindset. There is great testers. There are testers that are not so great as well, right? So that they just sit there as well at the very beginning of, when they're talking about design, and they're not collaborating either. But those testers that do know, that do have that mindset, that they know that they can collaborate earlier. And they usually, when they are like the subject matter expert on the system as well, a lot of the good testers have a good mindset to do that. Like they feel in for that SME kind of role within the tech team, so they can bring a lot of benefit to a team earlier on as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So switching a little bit to leadership now. So have you ever handled a situation where the leaders have said that they want Agile, but their day-to-day actions don't really kind of line up with those values?
Yeah. All the time. And it's because Agile is hard. Like to do real Agile is hard. So there's been numerous situations where leaders say that they want Agile outcomes, but then they're unconsciously falling back on past behaviors, back onto like command and control behaviors, or even very much so waterfall type behaviors. So, some ways that I would address that as a coach has been using workshops and retros with leaders to try to reflect on that disconnect and show how that's being transparent. I also like to go further by linking it to outcomes that leaders care about. So, showing how, whether it be context switching or content scope changes, et cetera, showing in the data how that might be eroding quality or predictability or cost control. Leaders always care about cost, right? So when we
Budgets.
exactly, right? And a lot of this does tie back. Like if we have good data practices, we can certainly tie it back to make it a bit more transparent for them. So when leaders see how their behaviors show up in those type of business metrics, they're more likely to shift and adopt a much more true agile framework, if you will.
Yeah, that makes sense. People are naturally resistant to change.
Change is hard.
Change is hard.
Yeah.
So can you, Shaquanna, I want to dive a little bit deeper. So you mentioned they are falling back to the old ways. Can you explain what are the old ways for them? How does it look?
Yeah. So this may not necessarily directly answer your question in terms of old ways, but one way that I really see this manifest is the assumption that agile automatically makes things faster, right? And I think that's a huge misconception that leaders have when we talk about business agility and what agile is truly meant to represent, that leads them to ultimately fall down to these old behaviors in terms of, we just want things now and fast and not really thinking about what are some of the best practices that help a team truly thrive and produce the best work. When I think about agile, it's not necessarily meant to be a shortcut for the sake of shortcuts, if you will. It's really about delivering the right things in smaller, higher quality increments. So I usually try to reframe that by saying, agile can help you learn faster and reduce risk faster, which in turn can make you more responsive. But if you're just trying to go faster for the sake of faster, what you're doing is you're changing priorities. Um, you know, you're impacting the team, and you're changing the way that they're supposed to measure value, and ultimately that just ends up in burnout and people feeling really discouraged with what Agile can help them do.
Absolutely. It's the context switching and,
Mhm.
having to work fast. It really does lead to burnout.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So, Shaquana, if a team listening today could
Mhm.
make just one change tomorrow to work more effectively, what would you recommend they start with?
If a team can make one change, I'm gonna take it back to the basics. I think if a team can make one change today that would make the greatest impact, it would be having a really clear definition of done. And I know that word gets tossed around a lot, right? And people think they have really great definitions of done, but they truly don't. Or if they
Yeah.
do, they're not using it the way that they're intended to do, right? Um, so it sounds simple, but I think it forces team to talk about what quality means, to align on expectations. You know, it helps prevent like half finished work from just creeping in. Um, to truly have a strong definition of done on paper, but and in practice is all about accountability. And accountability is really hard for teams to put into practice. So that would be my answer. A good definition of done on paper and in practice.
I love that answer, Shaquana. And I also think it's important that the team having a good definition of done that, or listeners understand that that should be every member of the team, every member
Correct.
involved in the product, not just the leaders on the team,
Not
but the
dev
people
done.
who are the ICs who are doing the day to day,
Yep.
designers, PMs, TPMs, QEs,
Yep.
everyone who is involved in the project should be all on the same page with the definition of done.
Exactly. It's not
Yeah,
design is done or dev is done. It's no, the work is done. It's a shared responsibility. Yeah.
exactly. So what I experienced before is that very often definition of done is considered, oh, okay, development is complete, but
Hmm.
it's kind of not done.
Right.
Right?
Exactly.
Done if it's like already shipped to production, it's being used,
Right.
and it's like it's up and running 100%, it's
Yeah.
working, like it's being used. But yeah, I have seen a lot. And I want to build up on this one a
Hmm.
little bit. So you mentioned definition of done. There is another definition that is like becoming more common these days, which is called definition of ready, right? Like
Yes.
when
Yep.
team
Hmm.
can start the
Yep.
work, right? Because
Hmm.
well, I think it comes back to this misconception about agile that you mentioned that
Hmm.
leaders have. They want something to be delivered fast, but I think this is something that they need to dive into, because if the feature, the topic, right, whatever they need to build, is not ready for the team to even start, then how can we move fast?
Right.
Like, well, there are like a lot of variables, a lot of
Yeah.
unknowns. So how can we move? So I think adding definition of ready would help this conversation with leaders. Like, oh, it's not like we are not fast. It just kind of we didn't get everything that we need to start
Exactly.
delivering.
Yes, I love that. I feel like they're definitely complements. And I have used definition of ready as well when working with agile teams. Because again, another misconception is that agile means you don't necessarily need to plan, right?
Yeah.
Like you
Yeah.
just work on things as they come up. And that's a misnomer. Like you have got to plan.
Mhm.
You may be planning in smaller increments, but it's important to your point to surface what those dependencies are, if you will, just to make sure that we're clear about the work that we're going to be working on in the next sprint or the next release, if you will. So that's the great add-on.
Yes. And the last question that we want to ask, you kind of answered it partially already. So
Mm-hmm.
it's about common misconceptions in
Yeah.
Agile. So you did
Yeah.
mention already that like Agile means fast, and
Hmm.
you did just say that like you doesn't need to plan for Agile. Anything else that you want to add to this like common misconception, please?
I think that's for me the biggest misconception. And honestly, in terms of the language that I try to use today, if you will, I do use Agile a lot, but I try to emphasize more business agility. because it really focuses on the partnership between both the tech and the business, if you will, the need for the two of them together to be on the same page about priorities, responsiveness to change in priorities, etc. Um, so yeah, so it ties into this misconception that agile is just this thing that tech does, but we're not building products
Mhm.
for the sake of building products, right? We're building products to support business outcomes. So I think the other misconception is the fact that it's not just tech, but business and tech need to be in great partnership, if you will, to achieve true agility.
Yeah, I think that's a great addition. Well, yeah, agile should not stop only on tech
Yeah.
department. Yeah.
Yeah, if it is to be good, I think Agile needs to include the whole organization for
Right,
sure. Yeah.
right.
So Shaquanna, thank you so much for sharing your stories and your insights with us today. I've learned a lot. I'm sure our listeners also have learned a lot too. So before we go, we just like to do a quick and fun 5-question rapid fire round so we can get to know you a little bit better. So ready? Here we go. Coffee or tea?
T.
Cats or dogs?
Ooh, that's a hard one because you can see my dog in the background right there. But I have an affinity for cats, so I think I might have to go cats.
Both.
Oh, wow.
Oh
Didn't hear me.
no, the dog is
Don't let your dog hear it. All right, sweet snacks or salty snacks?
Can I go with sweet and salty?
Yes.
I love a kettle
You
corn.
can.
I love a kettle corn. A kettle
Oh my
corn,
gosh.
popcorn with M&Ms, the best combo.
Mm.
Oh, I
Mhm.
need to try that. I have
Kettle
not
corn,
tried that.
popcorn, and ice cream.
Yes,
Oh
Absolutely
my
delicious.
gosh.
yes.
Keep them coming. I love it. I'm going to try all of these. Amazing. All right, beach or mountains?
Mm.
These are
I'm
hard.
terrible at this game because I love both of them. You know, in the wintertime, I love to be in the mountains. In the summertime, you'll find me at the beach. It all
There
depends
you
on the
go.
season. Yeah.
Rick says last
Okay.
one, book or podcast?
Podcast.
Ooh.
Right answer. Right
Yes.
answer.
Exactly.
Good
I
job.
know my audience.
Thank you so much for playing along with us, Shaquana. So before we wrap up, where can our listeners follow you, connect with you, if they'd like to learn more?
Yeah, absolutely. I am on LinkedIn. I currently don't necessarily post a lot, but I am on LinkedIn. And if anyone's interested in connect with me and have a further conversations about agile, about quality, or about just how to develop high performing teams in general. So
Awesome. And we'll also put a link to your LinkedIn profile in our podcast notes as well, so our listeners can find you easily.
absolutely awesome. Thank you so much for having me. This was a really fun conversation.
Thank you for
Thank you.
Shaquana for joining us. It was a pleasure having you here.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Thank
Bye.
you. Bye.
All right. That was such a fun conversation with Shaquana, wasn't it?
Really was. I had a lot of fun, and it's so interesting to also see how a lot of what she was talking about is things that we've talked about either in this podcast or amongst ourselves as well. So it was really great to see someone that's outside of testing that also has the same kind of views and experience that we've had in the past too.
Exactly. And I loved how she touched a little bit on some of the misconceptions with Agile, right? Like we've seen where they expect because it's Agile, it's going to be fast. We've also seen the one that she mentioned where you don't have to do any planning. Like I've seen a lot where because it's Agile, no documentation is needed,
Yes.
right? We've seen that a lot. Or that Agile is only for the software teams. And she brought around a good point that it's important for the entire org to understand the importance and the impacts that you can have when everyone is agile.
Yep, exactly. And we've worked in all those teams, right? The teams that had the leadership that thought that, why are you writing documentation? We're agile now. We don't need to write anything down. We just talk about things. And to see the impact that has on software quality at the end as well, because people are not aligned and all of that. So when she talks about that agile is much more than just a process, it's really a mindset. I could really relate to that.
Yeah.
Yes, I mean, I really like the statement about agile shouldn't stop at tech. it should go broader, because this is how leaders, stakeholders can see for themselves what it is to work in this way, right? With this methodology. Otherwise, they were just like marketing, legal, finance. It's just like, you're agile, so you can do this fast, right? So they like have no idea. They heard this buzzword. It's like agile, so it's like kind of like a counterpart for waterfall, and waterfall equals slow, hence agile is
Has to be fast.
Yeah, so just like it's interesting how how human brain works.
And I think, you know, Agile can be fast. It doesn't, but it's not always fast though. So it's the, I think it can be if you implement it correctly, but you're going to be fast at implementing smaller parts of your big whole, right? So we have to think about that as well. Is it fast? Most of the times it's faster, but you're not delivering the whole thing. You're faster
Right.
at delivering things because you're delivering smaller pieces of it, so we can have a smaller iteration and faster feedback and start it all over again for the second iteration of it. So maybe it's faster, but if they think that everything is going to be delivered fast at the same time, then I think that's where the misconception really hits home.
The other thing too is a lot of times when an entire team is starting to use this agile methodology, right? It takes time for the team to adapt, for the team to learn the ceremonies and the importance and how it can help them to provide these iterations faster, right? And so it's important for beyond the tech in the org for everyone to understand what is taking place and what it entails, and the time also that the team needs to adapt and to actually make this change. So it can be fast, but it will never be fast right off the bat either.
Yeah.
I wanna brought in another interesting point, which is like, well, Scrum is a part of Agile, right? And there is like a Scrum at scale, which is like Scrum of Scrums, which means Scrum that is being used across different teams, right? So, for example, if we talk about delivering a small, tiny thing like changing the way how add to cart works on the website, it's obviously only one team project. But if we are talking about releasing to the new country, it's already, I don't know, 10, 15 teams involved, even tech teams only, right? It's like different parts of the system. I think it's really important to understand that agility, agile maturity, how we said, right, of each team might be at different level, and it might affect outcome too. So one team can be extremely like knowledgeable with an agile, like already just like have everything figured out, and another team is kind of like in the early stages, and if we like put those two together, then well, it's not like we already do not have like well established agile practices in this case. There is still things to work on.
Yeah, I think it's a very good reminder. There's two things that I think are really important. One is that there is some misconception as well that Agile only works in small organizations, and it doesn't, right? It can work in large organizations as well if we do Scrum at scale. The other thing I wanted to mention is that, you know, it's really interesting what you said, because I think a project is going to go as fast as the slowest team or the least mature team. So the teams that are least mature, they are going to set the pace for your whole project when I have many, many teams involved. So that's a very good point.
Yeah. Another misconception that we didn't mention that I think is important to bring up is because of the whole mindset that we're, delivering things in small iterations. A lot of people believe that Agile has no deadlines, right? Like you're just forever delivering a little piece and just delivering a little piece indefinitely.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's another common misconception I've seen.
Yep. I've seen that too.
But what is the counterpart to that? What's it's for in real situation? Like
The reality
we
is
do
that
have deadlines, or what do you
projects
mean?
do have deadlines,
Mm-hmm.
and you can still work in an agile
Mm-hmm.
methodology with a project with a deadline. By, she mentioned the whole idea of the whole team being involved and shifting left, starting from the very beginning and making sure that the team is aligned of the definition of done, and just making sure that we set specific deadlines for the pieces that we want to deliver, and we're delivering them on time to hit the big goal. Obviously, when there's software, right, you maintain, you improve, but then that's a new project with a new deadline.
Yeah. And I think, we've all worked in companies that have like go to market dates that, marketing has already communicated or is about to communicate, or we work within deadlines that are, holidays that we need to deliver something by a certain holiday, or, at the end of the year or whatever it is. So those are deadlines that are non movable. We have to deliver by then. But I think Agile lends itself really nicely to it if you do it properly, because you can have several little iterations until you get there. So you can plan each iteration separately. And you can, even if the first iteration doesn't go well, you're getting lots and lots of feedback instead of having that one big bang at the end when we have to deliver that date. So, I think Agile, it a lot of, like you said, really, a lot of people think there is no deadline, that we can set our own deadlines. And I think that's true to some extent, that we can set the deadlines within the constraints that we are given. So if we have to deliver X by a certain date, we can have little Y's that we deliver until we have the whole thing delivered at a certain date. So, and we've talked about this, we can deliver behind feature flags, or we can deliver little increments to the customer as well, depending on what it is. There are different ways that we can have that delivered. But the reality of business is that engineering teams are most likely than not going to have to work within deadlines. We're going to have something delivered by a certain date, be it set by the market or set by leadership or whatever it is. So very, very good point.
Absolutely.
Or by calendar, like
Yes.
holidays.
Sounds great.
No one is moving Christmas.
And I love that she spoke about the importance of the teams aligning on the definition of done, right? And then Veronica, you brought around the point of aligning on the definition of ready also,
Yeah.
because it's important for the teams to be aligned with both of these to help, reduce rework and make sure quality stays at the center even.
Yeah. And you also mentioned really in there that there is no definition, like it's not ready for testing, or ready for, like there is only one definition of done. It's when things are done, ready to go to production. There is not a little done, half done, development done. It's done. I've worked within a team that we had two definitions of done. We had done once engineering was done, and then we had done, which is like when it was actually ready. And I'm not a word of a lie, like it was done and done. So really done wasn't when it was done, but we had those two different definitions, because in that particular place, the engineers had they were very strict in calculating cycle times. So the engineers got really dinged if they took too long to finish a project. So they would put it into done state, so that the clock would stop running for them, because it was super, like, from a metrics point of view, completely, like, we can talk about metrics, I think, in another episode, but it was very detrimental to the team, because we had implemented a process just so we could meet a metric, because the engineers are being measured on when they delivered to quality, and then we were measured on how long it stayed with us, and then if there was a cycle had to go back, it was really hard. So it was really counterproductive, that metric. But anyway, fun story, done and done, like true story.
Yeah.
And so what happens when it goes to testing and then it goes back? It becomes redone and then
Then
redone.
it's not done.
Undone. That is too funny.
And it happened a lot. So yeah.
Yeah, considering that there is a lot of confusion around definition of done, can we just like brainstorm right now and try to identify those like criteria that can be used for the team that want to start using this definition of done.
Yeah, what I do like doing with the teams that I work with is really get the tester to run a workshop within the squads. So each squad would have their own definition of done. We'll provide like a basic framework, and I think we can talk about this now. Like the basic things we need to have for a ticket or a piece of work to be done. But then different squads have usually different necessities or different needs, and they will add some or remove some. But just providing like a framework for them to work upon. So I think that would be great, like for us to just give some of the things that we use as a definition of done. So I can start. For me, it's
Go
like
ahead, yeah.
done means tested. Done means ready to production.
Tested and like there are no bugs that are just like
yes. So test is finished, and we are ready for production.
Well, there are always bugs, but that's another story. But
there are no bugs that is going to stop
blocking
the release. Yes,
blocking bugs. We're not sorry. This is what I meant.
So done for me means right, like the dev work is done, testing is done. There are no blocking bugs, as Veronica said, and then all the major stakeholders are aligned and okay that this is ready to be released to production. So, product has to review it to make sure that this is what they want, then it's done. Because if product looks and says this is not what I want, and then it has to go back to dev and then the cycle continues, it's not done. If there's legal involved, they have to review it. The content team, if they have to be involved, they have to have their hand on it. Like every
stakeholders,
all the stakeholders basically be in alignment and agree that it is now done and it can be released to the customer.
I want to double click on what Ellie said about ready for release, ready for deployment. So for me, this includes a few things. First, it means that, well, as we said, that like the code itself is ready for like to be going. It's like a kind of like production quality, right? So it's like has no blocking bugs that interfere with users using this new features that we about to introduce. Second, I would say I would like to make sure that we have regression coverage done, regression coverage and new feature coverage. And what I mean by that, mostly like at least like a couple of automation tests that would allow us to be quickly notified if something goes wrong. And on top of that, I want to have some production monitors set up and ready to go, so we can be quickly alerted if something goes wrong in production, and we don't need to like monitor it by themselves, like manually, right? Or being in the dark that feature is not working like for a month or two. So this is what I feel like ready to be released means, like which
and I
is
think
supposed
all
to be
of
included.
those,
Yeah,
all of those
into the
things
definition of
should
that.
be like should be part of your checklist as well. Observability for sure, because if we don't add it to the definition of done, we're going to go to production without any monitors, right? So we need to have there. And I depending on the team or the company that you work for, something that I usually add as well is documentation. So if you need to have new documents for your users or change your marketing website or something like that, I want to make sure that that's part of the definition of done as well, because we want to make sure that we are synchronized. It's a very different team that does all of those, or training, teach in training the trainers. We need to have that all lined up. So I add that as a definition of done as well.
Yeah,
and I think one more that I just remembered is accessibility as well. Just making sure that we've tested for at least the basics of accessibility before it goes to production.
Yeah, and that should by default be a part of testing, right? And like one of the things that I've done at a previous company that I loved is that once we met as a team and we understood what the project entailed, once we went over the requirements and we created the stories, we made sure that all of these things were like a subtask to the major story. So even setting up the monitors, the accessibility testing, all of those things were listed as subtasks. So the original story cannot even be closed or moved to done until all the subtasks are done.
That's a
Because
great
those are
process.
definitions of done. This is like parts of definition of done.
Yes.
Love
Okay, do we
that.
want to talk in the same manner with the definition of ready, about the definition of ready?
Yes, let's start.
I think the first thing that, we need to understand as a development team is just like, what do we need to have before we start development, right? So we need to have clear requirements. We need to have visuals, right? Like how it's supposed to look. So some kind of mock-ups. And we need to have, at least, if as we mentioned before, right? Whereas no, sometimes where are like deadlines that are non-negotiable, we need to have this information too, to understand how to prioritize it inside the team too, additionally. So anything else that we would need to add for the readiness?
Well, we need to
I
know who all the stakeholders are who would need to approve it before it's
Yes.
considered done, right? So that's also important to know.
So we kind of need to know we kind of need to start getting into looking at our definition of done and see what are all the things that we need to do, and all the responsible people who's supposed to be signing up on that.
And another
Right.
important thing that I see that we often forget about too is test data. Like, will we be able to get test data? How, is that going to become a blocker once we're trying to get this feature done? So that's another thing that even at the beginning, when you're looking at definition of ready, you should really try to consider, will we be able to get test data to properly test this feature?
And I think one step further, even really part of that, testability, test data is one part of testability, but do we have the right environments? Do we need to connect sandboxes? Do we need to contact a third party provider to get APIs from
Absolutely.
them? So all of the testability, have we discussed what the ideas are going to be so we can automate it properly? So all of those conversations can be had and should be had before we even start.
Anything else? So I feel like it kind of covers the basis.
I think one thing that we talked about in another episode as well is having a pre-mortem, right? We can discuss a lot about this during the pre-mortem as well, and talk about risks and what can go wrong, before we actually start. So let's put our heads together. We have everything ready. So before we actually start, so I think having a pre-mortem is a great tool to help us really think about all of this checklist for the definition of ready, to make sure we didn't forget anything.
That's a good
And one
point.
thing that would be helpful with regards to the name, like a lot of teams do these things, but I've seen where you see a lot of definition of done, but you don't see a lot of definition of ready. So many companies that I've worked with, it's there like mentally, it's like an unspoken thing where some agree, some don't, but I think it would be always helpful to have it documented. Like, this is what it means that we're ready, and have checklists even that as we're going through the pre-mortems, as we're going through these meetings, we can say, okay, we've covered all these things. Now we're ready.
Totally.
Yeah, so this was good. I think we're gonna wrap it up for today's episode. We had such a thoughtful conversation with Shaquanna. And we hope it gave you, our listeners, some new ways to think about agile leadership and how teams can own quality together. So thanks again for tuning in, and we can't wait to share more with you soon.
And if you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe, leave us a quick review, and share it with a colleague or friend who is just as curious as you are about building better teams and better software. We will catch you in the next episode.
And we've got plenty more inspiring guests and topics coming up this season. We're all very excited to get that out there. So keep an eye out. You can follow us on Engineering Quality wherever you get your podcasts. And you can find out more details about our podcast on our website, www.engineeringqualitypodcast.com. You can connect with us on LinkedIn at Engineering Quality Podcast. And now you can watch our conversations on YouTube as well at Engineering Quality. Until next time, everyone, bye for now.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.